Welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with lead sports scientist from the Canadian Women's Sevens, Tyler Goodale. This episode of the Pacey Performance Podcast is sponsored by simplyfaster.com, and that's spelled SIMPLI faster.com. So alongside the free lap timing systems, simplyfaster.com currently holds the eccentric K-Box. So if you haven't heard of the K-Box, it's a new product that uses flywheel technology to allow higher velocity eccentric overload. So I saw the K-Box for the first time when McKeown from the US brought a couple over for one of his workshops in Gloucester. So off the back of that, I was really keen to use one, and I actually got my hands on one and was able to spend a couple of hours playing around with lots of different exercises and getting used to the K-Box. So from personal experience, getting out at the bottom of the squat, powering up and having the K-Box pull you through the floor on the way down is absolutely incredible. So basically, the harder you go on the concentric portion of the lift, the more it's going to give you on the eccentric. So if you're going to go for it, you're going to get pulled through the floor. At simplyfaster.com, there's also a great blog from Frederick, who is one of the co-owners of Eccentric, so you can learn more about the K-Box there. So if you are interested in getting a K-Box, get to simplyfaster.com, so that's SIMPLI faster.com, and get a K-Box for yourself. So this episode of the Pacey Performance Podcast is also sponsored by Vald Performance, creators of the Nordboard. So if you haven't heard of the Nordboard already, don't worry, I'll explain. It's really simple. The Nordboard is a really fast and accurate system for monitoring hamstring strength. So as practitioners, we can do very little about athlete age and previous hamstring injury, but what we can do something about is our athlete's eccentric strength, and that's where the Nordboard fits in really nicely. It isn't going to get your athlete's hamstrings bulletproof, but what it is going to do is give you the right information so you can make the right decisions at the right time. If you do want any more information, you can go over to Vald Performance, that's VALD performance.com, or email info@valdperformance.com. So today we've got Tyler Goodale coming from Canada, who is the lead sports scientist for the Canadian Women's Sevens team. So really great chat with Tyler, such a good guy, someone who I'm sure I'll keep in contact with in the future. So just before we get going, just massive thanks to Tyler for giving up his time. So we discuss holistic athlete development and the integration of multiple training streams, especially for team sports and in particular sevens that Tyler currently works with. We discuss athlete monitoring and the integration of sports technology, whether that be in the gym or on the field. And we also touch on at the end leadership and management, which is a big part of Tyler's role. So it's a really good episode with Tyler. I know you won't be disappointed, and I won't babble on too long before we get into the chat. So just before we do get into the chat with Tyler, I just want to give a massive thanks to Train with Push for sponsoring this episode once again. So a couple of people have been in touch with me over the last couple of weeks with regards to Christmas coming up and basically Christmas presents for themselves. And I've kind of echoed the sentiment that I've shared with you guys over the last couple of months, that Train with Push and the Push Band is a great product. It's got great people behind the scenes who are looking to push on and make the most of this technology, something that's not going to stand still, and it's certainly not something that's going to disappear like some products may kind of come and go. The Push Band is definitely here to stay, and is one that's going to be developed as time goes on. So I'd encourage you to get over to trainwithpush.com, and they've also started a podcast which I believe Matt Cusdub is who the sports scientist at Push is hosting. So episode 1's just come out. I had a little listen, it's really good, so I'd encourage you to check that out as well. But before I babble on anymore, like I said I wouldn't, here is the episode with Tyler Goodale. Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to the Pacey Performance podcast. So today I've got Tyler Goodale, who is the lead sports scientist for Canadian Women's Sevens. So just want to firstly revert back and thank Ian McKeown for putting me in touch with Tyler. Followed him on Twitter, so it's great to make that connection via Macca's. So thank you very much for that. So just want to firstly thank Tyler for his time, for giving up an hour of his time on a Friday afternoon or Friday night for me. So just thank him for his time to come on the podcast and ask him to give us a little bit of introduction on himself, his background, his education, and what he's currently doing. So welcome to the podcast, Tyler.
Thanks, Rob. It's an honor to be invited to speak on the podcast, and I'll definitely do my best to uphold the level of people that you typically have on this podcast. So I definitely feel elevated to be held in somewhat of that regard.
No problem, mate. No worries.
So yeah, my background, I'm based in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. I work for the Canadian Sport Institute Pacific, and through the Canadian Sport Institute Pacific, I work with Rugby Canada and specifically the Women's Sevens program, which is based here year-round as the National Training Center. And in that role, I lead over both the sports science and the sports medicine program, but specifically as a practitioner, do the sports science and an S&C perspective for the team. Leading into this role, a little bit more background maybe from an education perspective. I kind of grew up in the middle of Canada. And I did my undergraduate degree out there and did a basic Bachelor of Science degree, kind of not knowing where I wanted to go with things. And I was actually lucky enough to have an advisor in the later part of that undergraduate degree that suggested I pursue, exercise sciences, exercise physiology, and that actually brought me out to the west coast of Canada to do a master's degree. And it was while doing that master's degree that I got involved with some of the national teams training out here on the West and got to meet some of the more senior sports scientists working with the programs, here in Victoria. And then kind of one thing led to another, and that got me starting my role at the Sport Institute almost a decade ago. And working through the Sport Institute in a multi-sport environment has just been great. Not only getting to work with rugby programs, but having been able to work with such a diverse group of sports and athletes. From diving, rowing, triathlon, athletics, even a little bit of a stint with some winter sports here and there through that time. So pretty diverse background and lots of different experiences on the way into these last 4 years, where just been focused primarily on sevens rugby.
Cool. So you mentioned beforehand that you had some pretty big shoes to fill in when you first came into your current role.
I did. So really lucky. To meet Jeremy Shepherd at early on in my own development as a coach. I met Jeremy early 2000s when I moved out here, and was able to mentor under him initially before he went out to Australia. And then when Jeremy was in Australia, we still stayed in touch, still did some work together. And then when Jeremy came out here, he actually laid the groundwork for the position that I'm currently in with the Sport Institute. Before he was, got on again with the AIS down in Canberra. But Jeremy definitely laid the groundwork for my position. And then when he left for Oz for a second go round, I was able to get in there and try to continue on the great work that he had started. So Jeremy's been a mentor of mine and a great resource throughout my whole career. And even you're saying with Mackers providing the introduction for the two of us, Jeremy was the same. If it wasn't for Jeremy, I would never have met Mackers. And so really lucky. A lot of my career, I got to say, like any people I think will say in this profession, it's A lot of times it's being in the right place at the right time and being lucky enough to know the right people who will give you a hand and then vouch for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you mentioned obviously having a mentor. How you've touched on it a little bit there. How important is it to have that mentor? And it's kind of it's one of them things like how does a mentor become a mentor? Is it like a handshake? Can you be my mentor? Yes. Okay, let's go. How did that come about, and how would you kind of recommend someone to find that person?
Well, I think mentors are huge, especially in this career field. If we want to say this broad career that is sports science, and yeah, it's very important for all of our developments, not only when we're starting, but as we continue down the path. I think going back, when I was just getting started out, finding a mentor, I believe it starts with reading what's out there, starting to formulate some ideas on your own, and then finding out who around you is doing some good work, and who would you kind of be able to start to observe and learn. And I think the biggest thing when you're starting out is a mentor, searching for a mentor, is that you really have to work hard, right? You have to really put the time in for yourself, to develop yourself, so that you're going to come along and you're going to be seen as an asset to that mentor, right? You don't want to come along and try to find a mentor and they're going to go out of their way. They're going to give you a lot of their time, share with you, and really invest in you, and you're not returning that favor, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I think it's one thing in this career field to have the educational background. It's one thing in this field to even have, I think, personal experience as an athlete, to help develop you as a very well-rounded, robust practitioner. But to me, the one thing that really brings it all together is starting to get out there, learning who's good, who's doing good work, and what can you take from them, not only in where they are at right now, but how they've developed. And with our own interns here at the Sport Institute, we often say to them, like, in a lot of respects, you can get to where we are in such a shorter amount of time, because we can kind of help funnel all that information to you, right? Like, we've kind of made the mistakes. We've kind of followed certain paths and realized that it might not have been worth most of our time. And now I think we can really help concentrate, these kids' efforts on where to go, who to read, who to take time to work with and watch and develop under.
Mm-hmm. Cool. That's great stuff. So I just want to move on a little bit and just discuss more your kind of day job. So with Rugby Sevens having kind of such a diverse set of physical qualities needed to excel at that, do you just want to talk to us about kind of pulling all them physical qualities together into one program?
Yeah, it's definitely it's what I love about this. It's so diverse. The attributes that an elite sevens players needs in a lot of respects are counterintuitive to one another from a physiological development perspective. They have to be extremely explosive. They have to have high speed running capabilities, but then they also have to be extremely fit, extremely aerobically fit. To deal not only with the demands within the game, but within the tournament itself, between tournament days, tournaments back to back, and then just to handle the whole training volume as well. Throw on top of that the tactical requirements needed, because in sevens rugby, unlike 15s rugby, I don't believe you can really have a hole in your game, because there's really nowhere to hide, right? There's only 7 people on that field per side versus 15s. So if you have any holes in your games in 15s, definitely team tactics can be used to kind of negate that negative effect you might have on the performance outcomes. But in sevens, that's not the case. If you've got technical or tactical deficiencies on your program or in your athletes, you're going to get found out. And then, finally, with respect to all that, then you've got, the athletes, mental abilities, and then just, I would say their lifestyle choices that are going to contribute as well. So when I'm working with the sevens program, and especially in my role, I really see that it's up to me to kind of be, the main person involved across all aspects of that program. And I often talk about there's the 5 pillars to performance with respect to sevens rugby. You have a physical pillar, a tactical pillar, a technical pillar, a mental pillar, and then a lifestyle pillar. And I really see it's my job to make sure that those pillars are being addressed for the athlete, and that everyone within those pillars is communicating with one another to produce the best athlete possible, such that the coach can simply just coach the game and implement that he wants on game day.
Mm-hmm. Cool. There's so many things that I can touch on there, but the first thing was the mental abilities, or the mental pillar, as you called it. What kind of how are you kind of assessing where each athlete fits on the, I suppose, a so-called spectrum with regards to mental ability? And then how are you gauging your sessions and your kind of program to try your best to fit each individual girl?
So we definitely are a lot more quantitative in our assessments of mental skill sets. We've looked at some quantitative measures, but the mental performance experts that I work with, we have some great debates back and forward about are there quantitative measures that can actually classify these mental skills we're looking to train, and they just don't feel 100% confident in doing pure quantitative measures. So, when we're looking at assessing these athletes from that mental pillar, it is very, very, very qualitative in nature. It's basically, the coach and the coach's observations combined with our mental performance expert and some of our other staff's observations in where we think the athletes can further develop. And to be honest with you, it's relatively broad across the team to begin with. It's like any type of education process. I think with athletes and our girls are just like any elite sport, where they've often get to this level and haven't necessarily had a ton of support along the way. So when they get up to a training center, there tends to be a lot of wins you can have in the short term, simply by doing a relatively broad education on the topic, helping them understand basic skills that can be developed in this area, and then going forward from there. And then once those athletes are kind of practicing those mental skills, then you can begin to target more specifically to the individual athlete, because that athlete now themselves is aware of maybe areas that they could improve upon more, but also the athletes built a relationship with the performance consultants and coach, so they're able to have a lot more open conversations around areas that they really think they can further advance in. But Rob, to be honest with you, what we look to do with these with our girls is just really help build resiliency and coping skills to help them understand and help them deal better with not only the challenges that they'll face on the field of play, but the challenges that they'll face in the daily training environment, and then just life in general. Not to steal the All Blacks, the All Blacks saying where better people make better All Blacks, but I think that's a great goal for any program, is that the better you can equip your athletes just to deal with not only the stress of sport but the stress of life, the better off they're going to be in the sport, but just to me, making them better in the sport is just one aspect of what we're looking to do. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if I'm going to look at, we're succeeding or not with the program, medals and victories is one, but I would hope that any athlete that comes out of our program is just better equipped to be a better person for themselves in the long run.
Absolutely. I like that.
Yeah.
So based on these qualitative measures that you talk about,
yeah.
are you using them so you can deal with each girl differently within the program, as in kind of individualizing programs?
Yeah, once you get rolling, for sure. Yeah, I think once we feel they have certain broad skill set along this area, then we'll begin to individualize, and that might be something, say, as simple as the practices that they incorporate into warm-ups and cool downs, or even while they're training, say skills like breathing exercises, visualization, positive self-talk, goal setting, to where it might be bigger pictures. So it might be an athlete, say, being challenged with external influences coming from, say, a loved one having health issues. So, we try to look at each athlete individually once we've kind of worked with them for a certain period of time and see where we can really support them the best to try to set them up that, that they, from an individual perspective, are as stable. They kind of have a stable foundation upon which they can really look to try to do some pretty amazing things, right? Because we're out there to try to develop a successful Olympic program, and there's only so many of those in the world, right? It's not easy to do that. So just like training itself is a stress, all these other life stresses can come along and really put a lot of pressure on these athletes.
Absolutely. So what does, on the flip side, you've always discussed the kind of mental side of things. What does the assessment for the more physical side of things look like from more your remit?
Yeah, so from a physical perspective, we look at assessing across all aspects of the sevens performance. So we're looking at running speeds. We take we test them on the 40. We're looking at their 0 to 10 velocity and then their 30 to 40 velocity, and getting an average velocity across those distances. We then use that that average velocity across either the acceleration phase or the top speed phase to calculate momentum for each athlete. Right, so momentum is just that average velocity multiplied by body mass in kilograms. We look at assessing their aerobic fitness through a 1,600 meter time trial. We like that because it's a practical field test for us, which we can then use if so needed to individualize some of their non-specific running based conditioning. We then do some jump testing where we're looking at different horizontal jumps, such as standing broad jump, standing triple broad. Looking at then some drop jump indexes, as well as then getting into the weight room where we're doing some 1RM testing with lower body strength, with the front squat, power cleans, and upper body strength with the bench press and the pull up. So that's kind of our general testing protocol that we kind of use across the board. And then depending on each athlete individually and the questions that we're looking to answer with those athletes, we might do some specialized testing either on the force plates with the mid-thigh pulls and the like. But we kind of save those special tests to profile, say, athletes who might have certain injury histories or coming off of injuries, or might be in the latter parts of their career where we're not necessarily as concerned with driving, say, strength in the weight room, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you mentioned a couple of horizontal jumps.
Yeah.
And then obviously the drop jump. Why would you go have an emphasis on the horizontal jumps over the vertical?
The vertical jumps.
Yeah.
So we had just seen in some of our own data over time was that the horizontal jumps were better for us in predicting potential for running as opposed to the vertical jumps. And where that worked for us, Rob, well, was that when we started doing, we use the word talent identification. So for athletes outside of our training center, they were easy jumps to implement around the country when we were traveling, doing testing. And you didn't have to bring really any specialized equipment with us beyond a meter tape, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, we feel that there's a good relationship with the horizontal jumping and running potential, and it works well for us. So basically, we can generate this data with our top group of athletes, and then we're able to track kind of the next generations coming in and seeing it. We feel that it'll give us a good picture idea of their ability, their physical potential for Rugby 7. So we've kind of gone away from a colleague of mine I'm really lucky to work with on a day-to-day basis, Dana Agar-Newman, and he's actually written a paper on the relationships in our girls with the jumps and the sprints. He started using the term now that we're adopting, is that we're not necessarily looking for talent in these athletes. Talent obviously is Rugby 7 specific, and it's very difficult to assess that talent at young ages, but we're looking for physical giftedness. Right, so using those horizontal jumps at our top level combined with our sprint metrics and looking at those relationships, we feel then as we go around the country to identify that giftedness, the potential for giftedness in the sport, it aligns nicely for us.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So you mentioned the mid-thigh pull, which was one of your kind of more individual based tests. At what point what would present itself for you to think that was appropriate in that girl?
So we've used it to date with certain athletes that might have low back injuries or any type of lower body injury where we're not necessarily wanting to push them on the squat to a maximal level or even pushing them on the clean. So that's where we've been using it to date. Also, though, if we want to start, say, we might see what we on the field of play, what we might feel is an inability or the athlete might be challenged to produce force in certain key sporting movements, say like defending a ruck or attacking a ruck. So we'll use it there to maybe kind of fine tune the microscope. So we might start looking at like a dynamic strength index to seeing, well, is this a force producing issue, or is this a velocity power output type issue? I think eventually, Rob, I'd like it that we could look to profile the girls, all of them in the program, kind of using those tools. But one thing we try to have in our program is we try not to change too many things too often. So what we try to do is we try to have some consistency in the program, and a big a motto of ours is first of all is that we build that consistency over to a 2 to 3 year window, kind of making notes through our debrief process and our self-assessment process on where things could improve, and then make decisions on, okay, is this improvement needed at this time? Is it going to inform our decision making any differently? And if not, if we don't see it as being a major change at this standpoint, we'll kind of hold off on implementing it across the board in the team, because we really look to keep things initially as simple as we can. But in that simplicity, we want to have significance, right? We want to be able to use simple methods to collect data upon which we're comfortable in our understanding of it, and then from that understanding of our data, make changes that are going to significantly impact performance.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So you come onto it there a little bit, which was my next point. We've mentioned technology quite a bit, and I just wanted to get your kind of take and from your experience in working with the girls over there, how you integrate that new technology. As like you've worked over there for quite a few years now. How has that integration? Has that integration been easy over the years, and what kind of tech are you using over there to kind of monitor your athletes?
Yeah, technology. Hey, it's definitely they're great tools. Has it been easy? That's a great question. I got to think on that. Some has for sure, some less so. But yeah, we try to look at technology as it's simply they're extra tools to add to the toolkit, and we try to think about our tech the same we think about anything else in our program. So maybe I'll give you like a quick rundown of the tech we are using. We are users of GPS. And then online monitoring tools. We're using sleep monitoring devices. I think mostly everyone's using from Fatigue Science right now. So are we, a group actually just across the water from us in Vancouver. We're using our jump profiling system, and then outside of that, just our small little pieces of tech here and there, to monitor either hydration status and the like with the athletes. But I would say, the big pieces of our tech would be definitely the GPS system, our wellness monitoring, and then our sleep monitoring system. Implementing it, it's definitely. There's definitely hiccups that comes with implementing any new, any new tech device in a big group. We have a group of over 20 athletes here, but what we've tried to do when implementing anything new is kind of similar to what we were kind of talking about earlier here with any of our tests. Is we look to implement it first by just collecting data. We try to not make any changes right off the bat. We just actually collect data and more formalize our data collection process and use it more internally to guide us in how we could actually do that process better, if that makes sense. And then once we kind of feel that we're confident in the way we're collecting the data, and that we're doing that from a reliable, we're making that data as reliable as possible. We're confident in its validity. Then we'll start generating a database, and we kind of use a rule of thumb that we try not to actually implement any changes off of tech. In the first 3 to 6 months until we've collected a decent amount of database. We can take some time, analyze that data. See what it's kind of maybe giving us some insights on, and then go about moving forward from there. So we're really big on taking multiple steps. When we do add anything in new, and really not rush into anything. To me, I look at tech is just it's part of your program. It's not your program. I think a little bit too much that I feel like I've been seeing lately is, there's this tech craze in sport. It seems like we feel like we can almost measure anything now, but I still think we have to kind of pause and really think about, okay, well, first of all, do we need to measure that? And then if we feel that we do need to measure it, well, then what are these measurement devices telling us from a data standpoint, and how confident can we be in the data that's giving us, and that to me comes down to reliability and validity of that data. Because I get a little bit concerned when I see some of these programs just blanket implementing technology and I think making pretty major decisions based on what the data is punching out, and not fully comprehending or having full confidence in those numbers.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned a jump profiling system. Is that your own system, an internal system, or is that something that you've brought in?
So we just use very similar setup to Matt Jordan. You had on a couple of podcasts ago. I think Matt's doing great work, and what we're trying to do is between the sport institutes in Canada, align ourselves as much as possible with systems that the different institutes are using, especially if they're systems that are well thought out and are giving you information that you can actually base your decisions off of. So we run a very similar system to what Matt does, and then we just complement that with a little bit of jumping, with even still using jump mats and using our drop jump index. So using kind of a combination of those data streams to help us understand a little bit better what might be going on with the athletes, either from a fatigue perspective or say just an imbalance issue.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So just last little thing on tech. Any gym-based technology that you're using?
Yeah, we still use, believe it or not, we still use the Tendos.
Okay.
I still like the Tendos for velocity monitoring. I know there's some great, I know Push is doing great stuff. I know GymAware has done some great stuff. I'll be honest, the reason we love the Tendos so much is they're just simple. When you've got a big group of athletes, we'll be giving, we'll velocity monitor with our athletes sometimes, depending on if we're looking to prescribe either loading protocols based off of velocity, or if we're looking to train certain properties like strength, speed strength, or say even ballistic strength, using a velocity prescription as opposed to a load prescription. So from that perspective, we're just we like them. It's easy for the athletes to set them up themselves, and then us just to float around it and monitor. We've kind of taken some time to look at. We're pretty confident in knowing the reliability and the relationship between, say, our ballistic measurement system with FitTech, our GymAware system, and our Tendo. So knowing that if we're testing the athletes, say using a linear position transducer off of the FitTech system, we're pretty confident that we can convert it then to the Tendos as well. So outside of that, we're also, I consider this technology. We definitely like using video and video replay with the athletes, either self-directed so that they can be watching themselves, or us just with our phones and or iPads, helping the athletes just break down their technique and see if any type of cueing that we're giving the athletes are making the changes that we're looking to see.
Mm-hmm. So is there any specific apps that you use for that kind of thing, or systems?
There is, and you know what? As you're saying it to me, I'm absolutely mind blanking on the name of the app that I look at every single day. I knew you were going to ask that as you were asking it, so now I'm actually going to open up my phone as we're speaking and tell you what I'm using. How bad is that?
No, it's fine, mate. No worries.
Sorry about that. Coach's Eye is what I like to use.
Yeah.
And then, but I'm still running a iPhone 5S, but I know a couple of colleagues that are using some of the newer iPhones are just liking the slow-mo video app in the iPhone itself. But I like Coach's Eye. To me, I like the touchscreen controls and the ability to go frame by frame and back and forth, especially for me on the field when we're coaching speed with the athletes. It's a really good tool for me. I know, like I say, though, a couple of my colleagues are really big on the iPhone's slow-mo just itself.
Cool. So I don't want to keep you for too much longer, but I just want to touch on your kind of style and your ability to manage a number of staff, so manage your kind of performance staff. Just want to talk to us how you go about that.
Yeah, it's we've got a decent sized staff, for the number of athletes that we have. So the size of the staff, and then actually, here in Canada, Rob, it's not necessarily like a pro team structure where, all of us are full time in the environment. Some of our medical staff still have to have other day jobs. We only get them, say, a certain percentage of their time simply, because the Canadian system is still kind of developing in that perspective about being able to employ very a large number, I should say. We're lucky we have some high level medical people, but we just can't get a big number of them yet, just based off of funding. So there's definitely some challenges in managing a team like that. But to me, from an overall leadership style that I look is I really believe that you have to empower the individuals you're working with. To me, the people that are on the ground floor, the people that have the hands-on with the athletes on a day-to-day basis, are the ones that have the information needed to make to implement the changes that are required to help progress the athlete and or the program, right? So you have to empower them to make that decision-making process. But then it's one thing to empower people, but it's another thing to make sure that people are making the correct decisions, and that the decisions are in line with the program as a whole. So the second part of that, to me, is really sharing information and making that information readily available across all aspects of the program. And actually, when I talk about those pillars, Rob, it's like making that information available, so that the nutritionist, say, knows that the strength and conditioning staff is, say, working on this aspect, whereas the monitoring program is showing something else going on, and by knowing all those factors involved, all parties can kind of help make the best decisions to move that athlete forward. Now, all that has to happen with a shared purpose, right? So to me, the biggest thing that I can do as a leader is help us define that purpose, right? So what's our goal as a staff? What do we want to? How are we going to help this team move forward? And then how are we going to go about that, right? So what's going to define success at the end of the day, as far as that purpose goes? What are the behaviors that are gonna allow us to define that success? And then how do we do this on a day-to-day basis? And to me, it's leadership always comes down to it comes down to the people that you're working with, and trusting the people that you work with. And I use the term, like, I just actually really see my role as facilitating the environment for them. Right. I need to create an environment for the staff, just like the athletes, so that success is simply a byproduct of what we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a little point down there about how you align your kind of thoughts and philosophies, but you absolutely nailed that. So I won't bother asking that, because you've done it already. So that's great. That's great. Like I say, I'm just conscious of time a little bit, but in a couple of emails that we had back and forth, you mentioned that you're going away, you're going to Dubai. Is that with the girls?
Yeah, it is with the girls. So the girls this year, both the men and the women compete on the HSBC World Series of Sevens. The men have 10 tournaments. The girls this year are unfortunately only sitting at 4 tournaments. A little bit down last year from 6, but hopefully up to a 5th tournament this year. But yeah, Dubai is our first tournament of the year, leading eventually into the Olympics for both programs. In August. So yeah, I do travel with the program. We try to share some of the travel with the staff, but this year being the Olympic year, we're looking at every tournament closer and closer to the Olympic tournament, that we're just dialing in exactly what staffing group makes the most sense for the athletes, and which staffing group creates the best environment once again for the athletes to do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. So do England have a on the tour with the girls?
Yeah. So
are they any good? I should know, but I don't.
You should. Man, come on.
I know. I shouldn't have said that. We should discuss this afterwards, but
we should. This should have been an offline conversation. Yeah, you have a very good team, both from a men and women's perspective. The women. It's there were 4 teams to pre-qualify for the Olympics based off of last year's World Series results. Ourselves, New Zealand, Australia, and then England women. So because the England women qualified last year, that means they qualified the UK. Now I'm not 100% sure how they're going to move forward with their team. If it's just going to be the England team representing as UK, or if they're going to be able to kind of amalgamate as a bit of an all-star team for the Olympics. But right now in sevens, it's a lot of how each of the teams, both the UK teams are going to represent each other. I think it's just kind of, I noticed that the men had just put forward how they were going to go about selecting for the team, because it was the same thing. The men qualified the UK team over Wales and Scotland, right? So I'm not sure how they're going to be able to bring in athletes from those other programs, but. Yeah, man, it's exciting. I got to say, like, it's, I worked in 15s since 2000. I worked in 15s rugby from 2000 until 2010. I did a little bit of work with sevens from like 07 to 2010, but it wasn't until 2010 that I went full time into sevens. And, as a former athlete of 15s and having cut my teeth in that as a professional kind of coming up, 15s obviously holds a special place in my heart, but sevens for me is now where it's at. I just love the game. It's so exciting. I'll be honest, it's actually challenging for me now to go back and watch 15s, just because it seems wrong to me. It's like it takes me about 20 minutes to get used to the fact that there's that many people on the field again, but sevens is so dynamic. I can't wait games, and I really think it's not to sound corny or anything, but I really think it's gonna catch the world by storm. It's it's such an exciting game. The athletes are so dynamic, and it just lends itself to just a great style of play, and as more and more elite athletes get into the sport, and as it gets more and more exposure on the world stage, it's only going to get better. Like Sonny Bill this year is playing for the All Blacks. Yeah. I can't imagine what he's going to be able to do, on that field with only 7 defenders. It's just going to be great to see. Yeah, so
absolutely.
Yeah, if you get a chance to watch it, Rob, I highly recommend it. There's a stop every year in London. So unfortunately, the women aren't at the London stop this year. If they were, I'd set you up with some tickets. But take some time. It's down at Twickenham, and it's great fun. It's such a good environment.
No, I should. It's bad on my part for not to be honest. But yeah, we'll I'll definitely catch it at some point. So
yeah, and even just like everyone, it's I think that if it can just get a little bit more on TV, it's definitely, I think, the way the game will be sold in North America. Mm-hmm. It just suits the North American crowd.
Yeah, 100%.
North American mentality.
Yeah, 100%. So where can people keep up to date with what you've got going on? So you're on obviously social media and things like that?
Yeah, I don't have a huge presence, but I am on Twitter. And my Twitter account, or Twitter handle, I guess is the correct term, is at Ty Goodale. So that's Ty Goodale. And then other than that, I don't really blog or anything. I am starting to publish some articles. So, if people do lit searches for me on PubMed, I do have some articles out there as part of my PhD right now, but that's about it. And then if I'm lucky enough to present at some more conferences here and there.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for giving me 45 minutes of your time. And
Hey, Rob, no, thank you. A huge honor to be asked. I really, I think I love what you're doing, man. Your podcasts they keep me company on long drives and long conditioning sessions. So I actually should be thanking you, because you help me learn, and you help me get better at what I need to do on a day-to-day basis. So I can't say enough of what you're doing here.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much, mate.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much for your time, and we'll keep in touch. We'll actually keep in touch.
We will.
Just say it and disappear.
No, hey man, it's like we all have to live up to macro standards. So
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's he's taught me a lot as well, and if there's one thing he's taught me about is how it is to stay in touch with people.
Yeah, but no excuses.
And on that, if people are, if anyone needs to get my email address, they can just go to the CSI Pacific website, or even on Twitter. If people have questions from a sevens rugby perspective, or want to chat, just drop me a line on either my work email that's on that CSI Pacific site, or just through Twitter, and I will get back to you, and always willing to share and pay it forward, because it's really it's the way that we've all developed, and it's more than happy to help people to develop and learn and share, right?
Absolutely, and I thank you for that on everyone else's behalf. So yeah, I'll let you go. But just again, thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak soon.
Yes, you're welcome. Anytime.
All right, pal. Speak soon.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 61 of the Pacey Performance Podcast. Hope you enjoy the chat with Tyler. So just a last little thing, a massive thanks to Train with Push, simplyfaster.com and Valve Performance for sponsoring the podcast today. And don't forget, the Nord board is looking to be released anytime soon, so make sure you keep up to date on Twitter and over at valveperformance.com when the product is going to be released, because it's going to hit the market soon. So thanks for tuning in, and I will speak to you in episode 62.